Hi, I'm Rigger. This is Your Right, and today I wanted to have a quick chat about the soul. But before all that though, be sure to like it if you like it, share if you think others would like it, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and subscribe if you want to see more. Now, the soul in RWBY is very special. Because it's confirmed to exist, it can be used as a shield and create a range of near magical effects from person to person, and be manipulated by God themselves for their own purposes. This is very important because it brings to light something the fans have discussed a lot, but we've breezed right past in the show, which is the confirmation of the afterlife. It exists. There is one. It's not the reality that we know, but it is there. It's another realm, as it were, somehow. Or at least that's kind of how the show mentioned it. They sort of mentioned it in passing. This could seem quite comforting. The pain of death is never removed from the lives of our characters, and losing someone from your life that you don't get to spend time with anymore will never be easy. But there may be some comfort in knowing that there is somewhere that they go. That there is something that comes after. That is the comfort held by many religions in the real life. That you do have more to go once you leave. I'm not the only person to say it may have been nice to see Jaune address this. It could even be something we can tie into his more chipper tone and confidence as of late, his enthusiastic outlook. The death of Pyrrha is something the show will never escape. There are many who get annoyed at its continued presence through the story, but it's something they have been a lot lighter on in more recent volumes. Many saw this moment at her statue as our sort of final closure, and it may be. However, it would also feel strange to never address her again, if we simply have her character stop being referenced basically here. Her name will come up again, sure, and we will have visual reminders of her, or at least it feels like that's going to happen. I'd be tempted to say good enough with this statue, and it just stops there. And we shouldn't hammer, the Pyrrha stuff for the whole rest of the show. With death in shows, just like real life, the key is closure, and it's not unfair to say that we got it. We have hints of family, of course, she has a family, why wouldn't they exist? And they obviously love her and have made their own peace with her actions. Jaune similarly has had a lot of closure, and that extends to the rest of Juniper with him at the statue. But I kept wondering, what do we do with her now? From a critical and analytical perspective, looking at the show, you'd think, there's more volumes to go, we know that. When do we use Pyrrha again? When is she going to show up? Because, again, it just feels strange to completely stop her and never reference her again. So then, how will we ever reference her again? What do we do with it? Not necessarily because we need to, but because you can assume it's going to happen again. It just makes sense that it will, whether you want it to or not. So what do we do with it? What can we do? It also seems like an element that just will stick with the show, no matter its full journey. So, to keep that element in play, we have these other little things. Gone but not forgotten is a good sort of term. And, we don't want her to become central to the show again, but we still want to have it appear in the show because it's something that's been with us the whole time. So I sat back and I had a quick think about souls, and the way we have these implications of Pyrrha sort of being around, right? Like that Pyrrha maybe guided Jaune with the fall leaf. We all know the fall leaf. Without it being confirmed she's actually somewhere helping, it does get that comforting little nudge that maybe, just maybe, that's what's happening to a degree. We kind of have this contradicting idea from earlier. It's in the same season as the fall leaf, but we saw Oz come back from the afterlife. So, how can you be in the afterlife and be on Earth? How does that all work? These are questions that the characters really should ask Oz. But what I will say is when you look at Oz come to in this space between realms, his consciousness seems off and he seems quite confused, He wants to go to the afterlife to see Salem, but is surprised that he won't find her there. He sort of doesn't know what's there, even though he's already been there. And it would make a lot of sense to me that, his conscious mind just sort of isn't retaining that information from the afterlife, separating the truth of it. And, it also has that otherworldly time and perception thing, it maybe doesn't quite match up with the reality on Remnant in our realm. Which, again, makes sense for, afterlife and spirits and souls and realms. And I actually would believe, and I almost wish they put in something about it, that, the God of Light stepped in there, that he, somewhat to a degree, started to sort of fog up Oz's memory and confuse thoughts and memories about the afterlife, especially once he accepted. That would really make sense, as it kind of has that, air of things you shouldn't know, You know, you probably shouldn't be alive knowing the full secrets and ins and outs of death. It's that, you know, you shouldn't know this if you're still living, and you shouldn't be able to give the answers to other living people. One of those mysteries that should remain a mystery. And if they did that, it would actually make a lot of sense that that's why the team isn't asking Oz about it. But the point of this video is not Oz, it is Jaune, and me realizing that before the series is out, it'd be nice and fitting for Jaune to see Pyrrha in some way again, and that the narrative doesn't want to totally forget her. So in the next few volumes or so, just once, when things get crazy and we're working towards the endgame, it might be nice or somewhat fun to think about how we do it. So, ground rules here. She's not coming back to life, alright, we're not doing full resurrection, no. She has no body to resurrect in, and it's no good. And it's just too easy. What? We have the gods come back and snap their fingers and she's back. That's not satisfying. For the narrative, we don't learn things doing that. And this whole thing should really only happen for sort of 3 reasons, or in 3 situations for plot. Because also, we want Jaune to be happy, and he is to a degree in his own way now. This isn't to, you know, undo all of his journey. To reintroduce her and just give them a happily ever after. That doesn't do anything. Her reappearing should only really happen under a couple of circumstances, and those are an epic moment, a tragic moment, or a closing moment. An epic moment is Goku's spirit standing with Gohan for the last big push, or even seeing Mufasa in the clouds to inspire you. A tragic moment is losing someone else, and having Pyrrha involved in that imagery, or it lining up with her imagery, so perhaps you sort of see them side by side. You could almost equate it to something also like the Goblet of Fire, where Harry can see his parents and Cedric, but only long enough for them to tell him to run, and he doesn't get to spend time with them. Or lastly, a closing moment. A closing moment would be more like Anakin's ghost reappearing. You know, something that's full circle and rounds things off before we close out the story and the show completes its journey. So all of this made me think, how do we get there? And I realized Jaune's semblance is interesting, and it's something we might want to touch on with it. Jaune's semblance for the longest time didn't appear, and when it did, it's kinda cool, but it's sort of underutilized. We know it'll have some payoff when he takes Vine's advice about, you know, extending it out, and that'll kind of count as semblance evolution, but not really, it's sort of like a new aspect of the same ability. But we know semblances can keep growing. RWBY's has changed a few times, and we've seen Ren grow from one type of power to a different semi-related power, a full pivot into 2 different abilities, a new angle on the previous thing. So people have talked about what can Jaune's semblance evolve into, like what sort of other aspects can we get from this, and one of them that's come up a lot is like sensing/seeing auras. And that kind of makes sense, especially for a team leader, like know where your teammates are around you, find someone who's lost, not get sneak attacked because you can feel the aura coming. Because you've probably already connected the dots for yourselves here what I can do with this. If Jaune's power is to boost aura, and he could evolve his senses to feel auras around him or see auras, and aura is the soul, this could be how we touch on Pyrrha again in a natural way, and only when it's really needed for the story. Because auras are your soul, and Pyrrha may not have a body anymore, but she did have a soul. We've seen touches like the fall leaf indicating she may be in some way around. However, it does have that afterlife, mysterious way sort of nudging things around. We could perhaps play with that. But if we're going to do this, we have to do it right. No super obvious hammer to the skull moments unless we're at the end, okay? It doesn't matter because we're wrapping up at that point. Basically what I'm saying is they don't get to have a conversation unless we're in like the final volume or something. It can't be like that unless we're at the end point, so I'm just putting that out there. So if we're doing that thing, it has to be right at the end. But if we want to touch on it before then, we could actually do some really cool stuff. First off, we'll look into this sensing aura angle. In a very RWBY style, we could do it where you somewhat leave the audience to fill in the blanks. You have Jaune develop this ability, and he uses it once or twice to find someone they're looking for or stop a surprise attack. The usuals, right? He uses it in a normal way. And then you do a big fight. Maybe something like with Tyrion or someone. A real enemy, a real threat, and the team has to work together to fight. And it sort of goes nowhere. Like, you know, they protect themselves and the bad guy gets away or something. It's just an encounter in like the middle of the volume. However, later, you maybe see Jaune getting a little paranoid or looking a little suspicious. When asked, he says he can't shake the feeling that they're being followed or watched. RWBY takes it seriously, and we'll make it RWBY so we can reference them having their talks they've had throughout the series. And she inquires what he means. He says that when they were fighting, he kept feeling someone else. Another person, but he couldn't quite figure it out. It was different somehow, it was barely there. He couldn't see anyone, but sometimes it felt like they were standing with the group. He could swear at some point it was as if there was someone standing shoulder to shoulder with them, but there was no one there. And if you want to, because this would be definitely my style, and add a lovely touch, you flash back to the fight as he's talking. And you show that yes, indeed, he did look weird in the background for a moment or two. You show some planning ahead with this plot point. You show that during the fight in the background, Jaune was looking around or turned his head oddly. And you didn't really notice it at the time, but on a rewatch, yeah, he actually did it in the fight too. It is there. The conclusion they both come to can be something that, for the moment, you're still just new to this power, and maybe there's something you just haven't worked out yet. Maybe it's because Ren was using like 2 powers at once or something, and it felt like a second soul. Or maybe there was just like a mouse on the ground you didn't see as a small little soul, some animal was around. A clearly cheap explanation, and then don't address it for a long while. But after that, you see Jaune is doubtful of that conclusion, like he squints and he's thinking it over and clearly not satisfied with that explanation. And then drop it. Don't reference it again for as long as you're happy to do it. Have the internet yelling at you that you just dropped this plot point and just forgot about it. And now we flash to way later. At some point early in whatever volume we're in now, you have Jaune drop a line about this in another conversation with RWBY. You just have them discussing things, how things are going, and how he's glad he can always talk to her about stuff. And in one of them, you have him drop a line where he mentions something like, "That's why I went to you and my semblance was feeling weird." Did you ever figure that out, by the way? And Jaune just sort of sadly shakes his head and claps her on the shoulder with a shrug, and we move on. Audiences are reminded, and we'll touch back on it later. It wasn't forgotten, and the fans can now yell at you again for writing it off and attempting to cover it by just having Jaune shrug and walk away. You clearly had nothing planned, blah 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 blah. It's actually a good idea to lean into that kind of a response sometimes. If you know you're gonna get it, you can use it to your advantage. Sometimes when you actually do have plans for later, you can cover them up knowing everyone's going to attack you and just think, oh no, they're not going to do it right. And then you can pull out a nice shock because you have planned ahead. But again, then later this volume, we jump to climactic scenes. A big fight or big situation. We have semblances flying. And one scenario I really like is this idea that the team is trying to hold something back from falling or stopping something from sliding. So imagine like 2 or 3 of them near the ledge of like a big cliff, and there's a big vehicle or something in front of them that's sliding towards the ledge, and it's up to them to try and stop it, and they really need to. So they're all like bracing against it, like they got their shoulders against it, and their feet are sliding, trying to hold it back from falling off the ledge. And we really need this thing for plot and story, right? Whatever it is. The people there, let's say the ones free to do this are like Jaune and Nora and Yang. Nora makes a quip about like, oh, some electricity would be good, but clearly they don't have any, to get her strength up. But Yang is the key to this, because the team is sliding and being pushed back, and they can't let this thing fall. So, after this Nora quip, and Jaune says we can't stop it, then it's time for Yang to yell out to boost her. She fires up, the eyes go red, and she starts burning. Jaune is boosting her, and let's say for fun he's doing it with a bubble, like Vine suggested. He expands his soul, his aura, so he can encompass them and they can keep on pushing on the thing, especially with his own hands, but his aura is boosting Yang so she can keep burning for longer, keep that strength up, keep that advantage up, and it starts working. They push it one step, and another, and it's happening. Jaune's strained face is dripping with sweat, looking down as he's pushing on it with both hands, but he gets a smirk of victory as they start making progress. And he looks beside him to Yang to encourage him. And oh my god, it's Pyrrha! She's right there. It's right in his face. She's right there beside him, with her head turned to the side, pushing with her shoulder against the truck with them. It's as if she's in the space between Jaune and Yang where someone should go. Jaune screams, and he slips, and he falls to the ground, and the aura bubble pops. Yang's burn stops as her aura breaks too, and they have to roll and dive off to the sides. Nora yanks Jaune across the ground sideways so he isn't run over by the thing as it slides the rest of the way off the cliff, falls and explodes at the bottom. Afterwards, Yang marches over, huffy and angry, demanding what the hell was that? And Jaune, who Nora is still holding him from where she pulled him away, rolls him on his back like, yeah, what happened? And they look at his face and it's like he saw a ghost. This ties in a lot of ideas. That she's always kind of there. She's helping. No, her pushing on the truck wasn't really doing anything, but it's a metaphor for her spirit trying to help Jaune out. And what we did utilize was part of Jaune's semblance in a fun way. It sort of works in a technicality. He boosts aura. He boosts the soul. The soul that could kind of feel around him from earlier, from like a volume before, now again appears because it was too weak to really get a trace on, right? It wasn't really there, he was confused about it. But in that bubble, at that moment, it was trying to help and he boosted it. He accidentally powered up Pyrrha's spirit to the point where he caught a brief glimpse. But only him. No one else could or can see this at all. It all ties back to his aura senses. He can see a aura being. Also, this did something for the audience, because it'll blow everyone's mind in a nice cut, and the long-term storytelling with the plot, and it makes those points actually mean something. But also, we took it away just as quickly. We only caught a brief glimpse of her. Make sure you see her face, not just like her hair, but you only saw it for a moment, and only Jaune. But for the audience, we also took it away just as quickly. We didn't speak to her, she's not always around, we just got a brief glimpse, just like Jaune did. And we get to see a lovely updated Pyrrha in the newer engines, which is nice. You know, get some art that, you know, matches the rest of the show. Then, Jaune takes a little trip in the plot. We have him doing the obvious, which he then starts flexing the hell out of his semblance to try and see Pyrrha again, but it's not working. Again, we have a reference to Jaune training alone when RWBY found him, but we do it again where he's on his own in a clearing when he should be sleeping, but instead he's firing up his semblance and making a big bubble and like really concentrating. He does it again and again until his aura breaks and he's left out of breath on the ground and frustrated. Though this time, RWBY will actually go and talk to him to find out what is up, and we do the thing where RWBY and Jaune talk again. Not just a chat, but a proper heart-to-heart, and we get RWBY in on this. Also, Lancaster people, look, it's not the time for that, but I can't deny this scene would have a lot of those tones in it, probably. But we'd have them bond over her memory, and we have RWBY there to ask questions on behalf of the audience. She's our stand-in. Are you sure? What happened? What about after that? And we can actually get some of the answers from Jaune out in the air, actually said out loud. RWBY then, from her outside perspective, can be the one to realize that, hey, it's like she's somehow here, but it's only really caught your attention in these big dangerous situations. And yeah, that makes sense, she isn't walking with them every step, but she is doing her best to lend a hand whenever she can, and when they really need it. And have RWBY finally be the one to ask him how he's feeling. Have Jaune say he can never be over her. He can't forget her or anything, and he never would want to. But he had thought he'd put this to rest, and outside of revenge, all he's really been dedicated to is saving the world. He wants to take down Cinder for what she did, and that won't change, but he's not detracting from the group's goal. Sure, he is a person who cares and has wants, and he's not going to just put that away, but he's also not going to put it above the fate of the entire world. You could be adult about it, rather than telling Jaune he shouldn't want revenge or something super pure like that. Instead, you have RWBY reassure him that they will stop Cinder and they will stop Salem. And you could end on a lovely note that if Pyrrha really is here helping them, then there's no way they can fail. Then again, you leave it for a while. I didn't want to get too Twilight with this part, but you could do a thing where Jaune might possibly be taking some unnecessary risks or diving into combat too readily, and have it questioned if he's trying to make Pyrrha appear again. You could do a little story with that, as it'd be sort of a new side to Jaune. Take the guy who's usually apprehensive and calculated, and suddenly he's eager to jump into fighting. Not like with Cinder, because that was with Cinder, so it's understandable for him, but just in general. Then the question becomes, well, where do you want to go from here? And I really only see two ways it ends. Either you mostly drop it, but there's, let's say, when you get to the final showdown with Cinder, magic flying everywhere, Jaune's semblance doing its thing, crazy stuff all over, and that's when you do see her again. Right at the end. Right near the ending to this whole thing. Perhaps, just like Goku, you have Pyrrha's hand guide Jaune's sword, and he delivers the killing strike to Cinder. Something like that. You could almost see it as a metaphorical moment as well. Not just that she's here helping literally, but her training and her guidance is guiding Jaune's hand on the swing. He would never have been this person without her. And after that moment, it's done. Pyrrha can now truly be at rest. Jaune delivered his vengeance. He closed the loop and it's come back full circle. At this point, For the first time, this is when the Pyrrha spirit actually lingers for a moment. She smiles at Jaune. They lock eyes. They acknowledge each other. Jaune also smiles back, and the sun outside cracks over the horizon for a new dawn, and Pyrrha softly fades away. A really nice moment, a real closure for all involved. I think I like this one. I think it might be how I'd do it if we were going down this route. But of course there is another one, the much more ham-fisting one, which is they get to talk. And if you can do that, you'd have to play it out totally differently. No talking to Force Ghosts standing around a battlefield, it kind of ruins the mood. The whole point with the last one was it was a smile and a look. They didn't talk, it was the acknowledgement that they really were there. And she faded away happily. If they're going to get to chat, and we're going to bring back the voices and have them talk it out, you need an intervention here. You need an outside force. There's the relics. I'm not exactly sure how, we don't have all the details and specifics, but it'd be a magical intervention that leads to Jaune and Pyrrha basically being given a moment outside of time. Another way to do this might be the gods returning, if they were to come back and wipe out the world, or have changed something about the world and everyone kind of gets jettisoned into limbo for a little bit. I'm not going to plot out all the possible ways, but my point is, you'd need bigger powers involved. Having just an image of Pyrrha around in the last one, that's kind of fine with just Jaune's powers. If you're going to actually get them to talk and actually have it out, then you need much bigger powers involved. Otherwise, it's going to feel unearned, and it's going to feel like they're stretching things, and it's going to bring up plot holes, and yeah, you don't want all that. So, bigger powers are involved. And because we know RWBY's tendency to borrow things, I think it's pretty obvious we do Dumbledore's train station scene. But, we make it for them. Where Jaune gets knocked out, or killed, or magic happens from relics, or from God, and Jaune wakes up to find himself somewhere else. He is at Beacon. Not just at Beacon, but the only spot it could possibly be, which is right back on that roof. You have him wake up, and the tower with the green just comes into hazy view in the distance as he wakes up. And he's not laying down, he is sitting with his back to the wall. Just sitting comfortably. He's confused and blinking. It really is beautiful, isn't it? Mirroring family members line at the statue, and again Jaune looks beside him, and it's Pyrrha, sat with him just like that day so long ago. Jaune just stutters out, yeah. And they talk it out. She leans her head on his shoulder again as they look across the lovely rendered beacon at some of the hazy effect on it to show it's sort of not reality. You have Jaune get his feelings out in words about how hard it was without her, about how much he missed her, how he doesn't know what to do. And Pyrrha says what we all know she'll say, that she was always with him, but he still did it all himself. How proud she is of him, how much he's helped everyone, that nothing would have been possible without him. Have him ask the burning questions. Does she blame him for the arrow killing Amber, for all of it? And no, of course she doesn't. She wipes away the doubts lingering in his head. As they talk, after a while Pyrrha gets up and leads him to the edge of the roof, saying she wants to show him something. And she motions out over the school, and she talks about how she had this destiny to save the world. And now, because of Jaune, she finally did it. He fulfilled her destiny. He is that hero that he always wanted to be. We close the book on all the things that they've said. And by the edge, looking over the school, hand in hand, they finally get to say the words. I love you, Pyrrha. I never got to tell you. I've always loved you. And I never stopped. And she puts a hand on his cheek. I know, Jaune. You never had to say it. All this time, I knew. Don't think for a second I ever doubted you. I love you too. No matter what happens, I'll always be right here. And she slides a hand from his cheek down over his heart. They smile, and this time it's Jaune who leans in and gives her a kiss. And we get the pose on the edge of the roof, over the sweeping horizon with Beacon in the background. We fade to white and Jaune's back to wherever he was and whatever has changed around him. Maybe it was all in his head. Pyrrha said lots of things that sound like things she said before. The scene was filled with poses and positions they've all been in before. Maybe Jaune's memory kind of blended all this together to just, make a little play for him. But Jaune takes it as real, and the book is closed. We move on with the story to the final ending. I think this is obviously the less elegant approach. Leaving it all unsaid is sort of, perhaps nicer and more subtle. However, this is indulgently satisfying. It has that quality that the first one doesn't have. It's like eating a whole cake. It's big and obvious and self-indulgent, but it's also satisfying and full. It ticks all the boxes you could ever want to tick. It has everything to the fullest. Because of that, I can't say that I hate it. And yeah, you intentionally write it so it mirrors things we know, so you can always say, well, maybe Jaune's head just sort of jumbled it all together and it wasn't real. It's easy to tie that back in, we all know the scenes, we can all just put in little references that it would just be in Jaune's memory. And people can choose that it's not real if they hate it that way. What would be interesting, but probably won't happen because it's RWBY, would be if Jaune was actually in a relationship at that point. By the end of the show, he is starting a new relationship, and, we address this mature idea that you can love a second person. The person lost is not, you don't love them anymore, or, it's wrong. No, it's okay to move on with your own life as well, to continue living and be with the people around you. And the fact Pyrrha doesn't say anything about it, especially against it, gives that endorsement that it's okay. She also understands to love other people and would want Jaune to be happy anyway. Both ways also leave that lingering promise that Jaune and Pyrrha will see each other again. In the complete end, when Jaune finally passes away, there is a place they can be together forever. And on that sappy note, we come to an end. I'm not a very sappy writer, but it's Jaune and Pyrrha, so it just kinda happens. I really like the concept of playing with Jaune's ability, and they tie that into the soul. I've given 2 different endings here and how it could play out. Obviously there are others. There are other conclusions you could make, or, there's also what's going to happen in the show for real, whatever that may be. But these 2 I've given, they do kind of round things out quite nicely. One of the things RWBY doesn't like doing is having all the answers there. So it does give this satisfying little moment at the end, if right at the end of the journey, you finally tick the boxes and then let everyone go. But leading up to it, I really like the idea of Jaune having to deal with, that weird feeling and try and pin down what his thoughts are about Pyrrha's momentary appearance and at that point of peril and having to deal with that. I think that's really cool stuff. And it somewhat makes sense and is really nice to think of Pyrrha like that, sort of on the journey with them. I like the reveal, like it's a nice cinematic moment of, we follow where Jaune's looking and we've established where everyone is and we look over and bam, like right in your face. It's almost like a jump scare, but in a nice way. The reaction you'd get from your, RWBY's reactors would be awesome. Anyway, I'll stop self-congratulating because it's not a flattering thing to do and I don't mean to do it. Until next time though, remember, Pyrrha may not be in our story anymore. But with the power of theories, I can still write like she is. My name is Rigo. Hope you have a wonderful day. And hope I did alright.